Hello and welcome to the Future You webinar run by Prospects. Today we're focusing on well-being in student life. I'm your host, Emily Slade. I'm the host of the Future You podcast, also run by Prospects. And this afternoon, our panel are going to answer some prepared questions around well-being in student life. We will also have time at the end for an open Q&A. So if you do think of any questions throughout the session, please do pop them in the Q&A box and we'll address them at the end. For more career advice, articles, videos, and podcast episodes, do head to prospects.ac.uk to register for free. Now let's meet our panel. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Neve.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Neve Nicholson. I'm here today from Student Minds. I'm our program manager, so I work a lot with leading the training and talks, webinars, getting out there and telling people about how they can best support student mental health.
Brilliant. Sarah?
Hi everyone, my name's Sarah Sweeney. I'm chair of AMOSHI, the National Student Services Organisation, and I'm also head of student support and wellbeing at Lancaster University in the Northwest.
Perfect. Esther?
Hi everyone, my name is Esther Oyehire. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Nottingham. So being a student just a few months ago, I find that these questions are really relatable. So hopefully I can give some good advice.
Amazing. And Maria?
Hi, I'm Maria, currently in my second rotation halfway through the 2-year graduate scheme at JISC. I studied management marketing with an industry year at the University of Manchester and I graduated last year.
Amazing. Thank you all for being here today. So let's dive into the questions. Question number 1. How do you encourage students to build mental well-being into their daily routines without it feeling like another task? Neve, if we can start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, it's hard. I think that's the first thing to recognise. It's not always easy to prioritise our mental health, and that's why we kind of actively have to buy into this. That's why it can sometimes seem like a chore. So trying to do what we can to make sure we protect that time is really important. So my big tip would be to block out that time. That time can be different. So it can be whatever fills your cup again. So whether that's being social, whether that's doing some exercise, but one thing that I think is a really good one that's part of a daily routine without feeling like a chore is blocking out worry time. And this is a kind of specific psychological technique. So actually just saying, when you've got loads going on and you don't know what to do or where to turn to, just actually blocking out 20 minutes, half an hour each day of writing everything down that's on your mind. And that's helpful in so many ways that firstly, it's getting out of your head whilst it's all buzzing around there and kind of distracting you. It's getting it down onto paper, which then kind of just that download of thoughts is really helpful in itself. Seeing it on paper actually helps you feel more manageable. So whilst it's not a specific technique in terms of what you can do for mental health, it's just a way to kind of deload those thoughts and worries, which if you do on a regular basis, it's kind of like clearing the cache, having updates on your app. It's a really good way to just kind of maintain that without having to add something extra to what you're doing as part of your routine. So using those ebbs and flows as well that come naturally with studying. If you do find yourself in a time where you're a bit quieter than usual, that's okay. You can't feel guilty about that. Use that time to look after yourself and prepare for when those flows start to come through again.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I think it's about I absolutely agree with everything Neve's just said. But I think as well it's about thinking about how you can integrate things into your daily routine, not add things on to give you another thing to feel guilty you haven't done as well. So thinking about how you can weave wellbeing into what you already do. So like while you walk between lectures or take a mindful moment for opening your laptop and thinking of it like Neve's just said actually as well, a bit like self-maintenance, like charging your phone, giving yourself small regular top-ups rather than thinking it's got to be a big wellness project. It's how can I put these little like micro moments of calm or something that gives me joy like into your everyday life, whether that's like noticing nature or connecting with a friend, that type of thing, and just thinking about how you can build them in little bits without it hasn't got to be a great big take up a new hobby type thing. It's about where can I put those little bits of things that make me feel better and just slot them into my daily life really.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Thank you. So Esther, we'll come to you for what small habits or routines have helped you stay grounded through busy or stressful periods?
Well, it's so important to give yourself breaks, and it can actually be counterproductive to not take breaks. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm glued to a task, I tend to overlook things and end up making more mistakes as opposed to if I was to come back with a fresh set of eyes after a short walk or maybe even sleeping on it. So, a technique that some people may be familiar with is called the Pomodoro technique. And here's how it works. So, essentially, let's say you aim to commit to 4 hours of studying, rather than punishing yourself and counting down the hours and seconds until those 4 hours are up. The Pomodoro technique works by breaking up your time into 25-minute intervals called Pomodoros. And so after each working interval, you can take a small, like 5-minute break. And then after 4 Pomodoros, so an hour of working time, you can take a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes. Now, you can break this up however you like. So maybe 45 minutes of working time and then a 15-minute break or something. And there are apps that I personally like to use to combine this with that stops me from going on my phone to ensure that I stay productive. And to circle back to the question, I know I took a slightly different approach, but during stressful times, the work is going to have to get done regardless. So you can either dwell on it and, it can be very daunting, or you can break it down and sort of gamify your workload to make it less overwhelming.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Maria, what small habits or routines have helped you stay grounded?
So when I was at uni, I think strip it all back, go back to the basics. So like breathing, affirmations, getting outside, to get some fresh air, and reward yourself after every session. And I think the main thing that worked for me was keep one thing that changes daily. For example, a new mug, a new scent, or even changing your wallpaper, like your desktop screen, or even some flowers. It just tells the brain that we're not trapped.
That's really good. I love that. Thank you. Neve, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's the classic one of getting out in nature is a big one for me. I think especially I thought now's a really good time to bring this as winter's come in. Really be aware of lack of sunlight. So please get out in the sunshine, get that daylight on your face. It's the classic, bit of fresh air, as Esther was saying as well, that kind of taking some time away to kind of clear your thoughts, having a break, being very mindful as well. So kind of being aware of the chill in the air or if it's raining or whatever, but more importantly, getting that vitamin D because winter's really tough in the UK. And so it's the best thing to help keep your energy levels up and keep going really. So I thought it was a really particular point to add on around winter time. And again, vitamin D supplements are always helpful as well, getting some right vitamins that can be helpful to find what works for you. I'm very aware that these things might be a placebo, but if it makes me feel better, then it's always a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah?
Yeah, I would support all of that, particularly the nature. That's definitely something that I do to calm down. But I think some of it, it's almost like remembering your really basic physical needs as well. So when you get stressed or busy, often things like good sleep and eating well and hydration are the first things to slip. But if you can keep them maintained, they will be the quickest things to help. Sleep in particular. And I think as well for me, it's about having clear boundaries. So making sure you finish your studies at a set time or give yourself device-free time in the evening, and just kind of break up your time so you don't feel like you're spending the whole time working all through, and being strict with yourself to look after your own well-being, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Sarah, we're going to stay with you for what signs should students look out for when stress starts to impact their well-being?
I think this isn't. It's a really tricky this because sometimes you don't always realise, when your well-being's first starting to slip. So I think actually being familiar with yourself and what's normal for you is really important. But some of the key signs that are absolutely classic, not just for students but for everybody, that your well-being is starting to be impacted by stress is things like losing interest in the things you normally enjoy if you're not getting as much enjoyment out of those. Possibly because you're stressed and you can't concentrate on them. Maybe having disrupted sleep, or eating patterns, not having an appetite, or on the other hand, having like a really increased appetite for certain things. Feeling constantly tired, irritable, or detached as well, about not being able to connect with things in the way you might normally do. Lots of students and tell us that they often have, when they're stressed, they have real difficulty concentrating or making decisions, and that's because your brain is just overloaded already with the stress. It hasn't got any more room to do those things, and sort of feeling like everything is too much, or withdrawing from others, maybe, you know, withdrawing from the social events, withdrawing from those things you used to enjoy. So I think if you can kind of one of the techniques we encourage students to use is to kind of check in with yourself regularly and try and like notice those small changes. And if you can start to notice them and try to get yourself back on track before things get worse, that's really, really helpful. If you notice your sleep's being impacted, try and think, okay, right, I can, you know, what can I do to try and help myself have some better sleep and that type of thing. But yeah, so I think that's being aware of yourself, and when things, you know, if you feel things aren't right, they're probably not right, and that's how you can tell the stress is impacting. It's maybe time to do a bit of self-care and see what you can do to help yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. Maria, what signs do you think students look out for?
A common one that I feel like people tend to overlook is when your jaw clenches a lot and when you have tightness in your chest. Like I feel like people just used to pass it by like, oh no, it's fine, but it's very serious and very common. When you're always tired, when simple tasks, for example, maybe brushing your teeth, just feels so heavy mentally. Even acne, things like that. So like Sarah said, just try be aware of it and try reverse it.
Yeah, the jaw one, definitely. It's so easy to just, that sneaks up on you, doesn't it? And then you've got to just unclench. Absolutely. And Neve, same question.
Yeah, really good points. All touched on those common ones there, and I think I'd highlight the same, that it is different for everyone. I think one thing that's really good to kind of as that sort of check-in point is thinking about stress is normal. It's perfectly understandable to experience stress, especially in high pressure environments such as higher education. And it's a very different time. So stress is normal. That's okay. However, it's temporary. That's the difference. So stress should be temporary, so that once the stressor, whether it's a deadline, whatever it may be, once that's been dealt with, once that's passed, you should be able to start to feel back to your usual self. However, if you find it that's carrying on, that's again one of those signs to help, you know, check in with yourself and make sure, hang on, why am I still stressed? Why am I still feeling very on edge at the moment once I've already dealt with this deadline or whatever it may be? But I think that's it. It's thinking about the three sort of aspects. So the physical response to stress, the psychological, and the behavioural. So as we've said there, so the physical, the tight chest, kind of feeling you know, sweaty or on edge all of the time, it does kind of kick your nervous system into gear. Psychological, kind of how you're thinking, feeling very overwhelmed, out of control. And behavioural is a really good one as well, and that's often the one that we can kind of pick up on and think, actually, I've not been to the gym in 2 weeks and normally I go 3 times a week, or I've not seen my friends for X amount of time, I've not hung out with my housemates. So that's quite a good one for you to notice, but also tell your loved ones around you. Say, look, check if I've gone AWOL, if I've disappeared, maybe just give me a nudge, maybe just check in and ask if I'm okay. And that sometimes, if you struggle to find those signs yourself, leaning on each other to help kind of pick out those signs and symptoms, a really good way to kind of stay on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you. So looking back, what advice would you give your first year self about navigating the tough times, Maria?
Navigating the tough times, I would say have an island of safety. So whether that's your friends, family, I don't know, phone, a video, films, things like that. And also take regular breaks, because I know what it's like to, you know, you want to cram this much work in this much time, but it's not going to benefit you at all, even though you think it is. So as well as that, get out of your space that you're working in. Like, for example, like we touched on before, go outside, you know, touch grass. And for me, the thought of revising or studying used to hurt me like so much mentally. So you need to try and get rid of this perception and say affirmations again. For example, I need this for the life that I aim to have in the future, things like that, to try rewire your brain to start thinking positively.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. And Sarah, what advice would you give?
I think it would be about maybe, you know, that you don't have to have it all figured out. Like, it's normal for things to feel uncertain, and it's normal to feel a bit anxious about the future and what's coming. You know, that anxiety, and, you know, university is a stressful time, but it is also, it's about learning how to live, not just learning your subject as well. So I think that kind of being kind to yourself, accepting that it is, you know, you're not expected to have it all figured out. You know, you probably won't have it all figured out by the time you finish university, but you'll have some things figured out, and being kind to yourself with that, but acknowledging that is normal. And I think also kind of accepting that you will have tough moments, but that you will get through them, and each one builds up that kind of resilience and self-knowledge. And you know, kind of, once the more tough things you go through and get through and come out the side, the kind of the more prepped you are for when those things happen in the future. And a lot of that happens at university. And I think really crucial for me is kind of not thinking you're alone, not thinking you're the only person that feels like this. I think sometimes you can kind of struggle internally, and then you see everybody else's Instagrams and things where they're having this brilliant time and this amazing time. You think, oh, I'm not having that, I must be getting it wrong somewhere. I think actually most people have that same kind of uncertainty, feeling stressed and anxious about how they're going to do academically, or you know, are they doing as well socially as they might have thought they would. So I think it's just about being kind and not comparing yourself to other people, particularly what people are posting, because most people only post the glossy shiny version on social media. And really, you know, going and having chat to people, and you know, actually you might find other people are having the same struggles and same worries as you are, and that's often really reassuring. And giving people space to talk about those things can help you feel a bit more on top of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, we're going to stay with you for, if I feel awkward reaching out to wellbeing services, what's the first step that I should take?
I would say, you know, if you feel like it's a bit of a challenge and you don't really, you know, it can be a big barrier, that reaching out, or you're feeling a bit uncomfortable about it, I would say, like, take a small step. You can start small. You know, if your university lets you, you know, if you don't have to book an appointment straight away, you could send an email or use online chat if they've got that, and just to explore what's available, or just to sort of say, you know, I'm having a bit of a challenge, I'd like to know how you can help. All wellbeing teams will be absolutely ready to then help you with that. And you don't need the right words, you don't need to have a diagnosis, you don't need to have, you know, you can just say, I'm finding things difficult, I'd like to chat to somebody. And that's what wellbeing services are there to do, and there to support you. They're absolutely, and you know, the teams I run, and I know this is the same for other universities as well, but they're used to people feeling nervous and a bit anxious about using wellbeing, but there's no judgment there, and what everybody will try and do is make you feel at ease and help you relax. So don't worry about that. And you know, seeking that help and reaching out, that is a sign of, like, that you're looking after yourself, and you're taking your needs seriously. It's absolutely not a weakness, it's the strong thing to do, to acknowledge that you might need some help and reach out, and that help is absolutely there. It's a bit like, you know, you would go to a doctor if you felt you needed some medicine. You know, if you feel like you need some help to manage your well-being, that's absolutely what wellbeing services are there to do. And if just reaching out to wellbeing services directly feels a bit too much, you know, you could talk to, like, an academic tutor if you've got somebody in your department, or somebody who teaches you that you're confident with, or a friend maybe, and they can help you make that connection. Often your academic tutor can do that reach out for you if you're feeling awkward about that. So yeah, if you don't feel you can go to wellbeing services directly, then, you know, find someone you do feel comfortable with, and they can help you sort of smooth that pathway through.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Esther, over to you now for, how do you deal with the pressure of comparing yourself to others, both academically or socially?
Well, I always tell people and myself that comparison is a thief of joy. In fact, at uni, I would say it so much that all of my course friends eventually got on it, and we would always remind each other if one of us didn't get the grades we were expecting or something like that. But of course, it's easier said in theory than application. It's so easy to use other people as a benchmark for our own progress, when in reality, the only person you should be comparing yourself to is yourself. So, for instance, it's like trying to compare a sunflower to a rose. You know, they're both beautiful despite the fact that they look nothing alike. And in a similar vein, we have to remember that the presence of one person's success does not equate to the absence of your own. And another thing we need to be mindful of, I know Sarah touched on this earlier, is what we're comparing ourselves to. Because most of the time we're assessing surface level things, whether it be via social media or word of mouth, but people often present the best versions of themselves to the external world, and we don't know the reality of people's situations. So there's no point in comparing our own reality to someone else's idealized portrayal of what's really going on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And Neve, how do you deal with the pressure of comparing yourself to others?
Yeah, we like to encourage, and we know it is, especially in academia, it does feel like there's competition there, but what we're trying to push is kind of compassion over competition. Being aware that you're all in a very sort of similar environment or dealing with very similar experiences, you all kind of come into this place at a very similar time. For the majority, that is, of course, but we do all have our own experiences, but generally the environment that you're all in the same position. So look after each other. There's no need, the space for us all. There's no need to kind of, put emphasis on this competition. Of course, as I say, academia is a high pressure environment, but it doesn't need to be. It can also be quite a compassionate environment, and use that sort of aspect of peer-to-peer support with each other, and really just look after each other instead of trying to compare. I think, as Esther made that great point of comparison is a thief of joy. So try to enjoy the experience together, lean on each other a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, across to you for what are some accessible resources or strategies that students often overlook?
Oh, that's a good question. I think lots of the there's lots of brilliant stuff at university you can access. It is actually a really great place to access support. There are lots of student societies and peer support groups where you can connect with other students either in something you're passionate about or just because you're studying the same course or you might be in the same area. And I think that kind of making those connections and getting to meet other students, all of that's really, really helpful, and it can help you also sort of feel like you're not alone. And often other people will be sharing your experiences and sharing the same struggles actually, and the same concerns, and that in itself is really reassuring. Lots of universities will have their wellbeing resources all on their websites, and I know many of them, like including Lancaster, but most universities now will offer some form of self-help modules that you can just access online and work through, so you haven't even got to talk to anybody. There are different sorts of those available, but some of these are actually really, really good now. They're founded in clinical bases, and they're really, really helpful if you if you just want to work through something in your own time. There's also apps, some really great apps for helping you kind of calm down and have mindfulness. So things like Headspace or Calm. And then Student Space is a kind of completely free resource that's available to all students and offers loads of resources you can access online, and that's really, really fantastic. And there's all sorts of self-help things on there, videos, written guides, and you can also access support through there as well. So Student Space is a really great place to go. And then if you're on campus, there's often places where you can go where you might be able to just have a bit of reflect and reset. So things like physical spaces like the library perhaps, or there might be a faith centre or some quiet rooms. Have a look, see what your university offers, and if there's spaces like that where, particularly if you're having a busy crazy day, you've got a lot of lectures, you might be able to go and take a bit of time out and quiet time while you're on campus. And I think the other thing would be, like, don't forget your academic advisor, your academic tutor, whatever that's called at your institution. Almost every university will make sure you have one, and they're there to not just for your grades. They're there to help talk you through some of the academic stresses and help you think of. They're really experienced in managing strategies for coping with that type of thing, and they'll be able to give you some advice on that. So yeah, don't forget about the support from your academic tutor, because they're people who've been supporting students for years, and they will understand the particular challenges and stresses on your course as well, and be able to give you some really targeted advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. So next one's quite a big question. Niamh, we're going to start with you. How do you stop worrying about the future?
Yeah, big one. It's tough. It is tough to do so. But something that works again across the board is trying to focus on what's within your control. We can quite easily get sort of pulled along that string with the future what if. And it's something that I used to work for Anxiety UK, and it was one of the founders' sayings was what if, so what? And it just helps you when you start to get down that trail of what if, you kind of stop yourself, say, well, so what? Okay, at this moment, that doesn't mean anything to me. It's just a what if. It's not a real tangible thing. So what if that happens? Well, I'll deal with that when it happens, if it happens. And again, it's just a kind of way to kind of check your brain to stop going from that what if, and just focus on what you can do now. Focus on what you are doing, put your time and energy into building those foundations that will then lead into your future, because as I say, we don't know what the future will look like, we don't know where that goes, and they're all what ifs at the moment. So trying to focus on what you do now and focus on what's within your control is a really great way to feel grounded and not get too carried away and let those thoughts take away.
Yeah, absolutely. Maria, how do you stop worrying about the future?
So my tutor actually said this to me, and I'll read it out because I've got it written down, and it actually has stuck with me. So it says, your brain is not actually afraid of the future, it's afraid of having no path to the future. It panics because it cannot see a bridge, so it imagines disasters instead. So the goal isn't to stop worrying, the goal is to give your brain evidence that a path exists, even if it may be a bit blurry. So don't ask yourself, what will I do in my life? Ask, what is my next 3-month experiment? So if you break it down like that, hopefully it will help you visualize the future a bit more better and stop worrying. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. Thank you. Fantastic. Esther, how do you stop worrying about the future?
Well, personally, and I know this may not resonate with everyone, but I, as a Christian, find comfort in the idea that, that God has everything planned out for me already and my path has already been set. So my job is just to navigate my way through life one step at a time. And even if you're not religious, think of your life as a book. So jumping ahead to chapter 32 won't change the outcome or the ending. So instead of trying to predict the future, sort of like what Neva was saying, actually, just enjoy the moment. And instead of trying to predict the future and constantly rush ahead to the next goal, take your time and enjoy reading each page as it comes, because you can only read that page for the first time once. If you read it again, you already know what happens. And just like life, take each day as it comes. And unlike a book, you can't go back. So savor the present and don't stress about what's ahead. Just trust the author and take each day as it comes.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. And Sarah.
I think that's really lovely. It's a great analogy, isn't it? And I think I'll probably say the same thing, really. I think it's about focusing on, what you can do like this week, not try to solve everything at once, like breaking it down into chunks. It's a common anxiety. Everybody worries about the future at some point. And so I think it's about, doing that, thinking about what you can do, those small steps. You can maybe think about building in small future-proofing habits to give you more of a sense of control. So, if it's money you're worrying about, maybe trying to save a bit of money, put it in a savings account, or if it's jobs, update your CV, do a bit of work on that. I would say, particularly if it's jobs and life after uni you're worrying about, all universities have a careers team. Like use them early. You don't have to wait till your final year. Go and see them now. They'll be able to talk you through the sorts of roles you might be interested in, the sorts of skills you might want to develop, and maybe opportunities for developing those so that you're more prepared when you leave university as well. But what I often do as well when I'm worrying about the future is really like try and like ground myself by thinking about what I have achieved so far and those those difficult things that I've got through, but also those achievements that I've got as well. Reminding yourself of what you've managed so far can give you that kind of confidence that you can tackle what's coming. You've done some really hard stuff already. Just getting to university is amazing, really. Actually that congratulating yourself for that, but reflecting on what you have overcome, you can do the next bit. But I think that's brilliant advice from everybody else about that breaking it into chunks, and thinking about what you do in small steps.
Yeah, absolutely. So if a student listening today feels overwhelmed or lost, what's the one thing that you'd want them to hear, Neve?
The one thing I'd want them to hear is that they're not alone. I think, especially for new students, I think that I can't remember the stats specifically, but it's about this time of year, the first sort of 4 to 6 weeks, students feel very overwhelmed, and there's more thoughts of dropout around this time than any other time. So it's really being aware of that. I mean, again, one stat that I do use a lot is there's a big difference between the student journey and the general population when it comes to mental health. So the stat that I use to kind of compare this is the loneliness stat. So in the general population, levels of loneliness sit around 6%. So people feel lonely somewhat or all of the time, and that's around 6% of the general population. Whereas in the student population, that's around 24-25%. So it's nearly 4 times as higher. And which can seem surprising when I think there's a lot of noise around the university experience being very sociable. But it's a very overwhelming experience, so it can be very easy to stay in your room. But I want people to know that you're not alone and that other people will be feeling the same way that you're feeling. try and make those connections. It feels awkward. We all feel awkward. It feels difficult. You've just got to try stuff out. And I'm not trying to play that down. It is a difficult thing to do, and we're not saying it's as easy as that. That in itself of pushing your comfort zone is very difficult. So yeah, make that connection. As I've mentioned earlier as well, look out for each other, lean on each other, learn more about the experience as well. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, the student space, so that's from us at Student Minds, and we're actually pulling it all onto our main website now, which has been given the shout out to the team. We've got a new rebrand and it looks fabulous. So if you go onto the Student Minds website and click I am a student, we've got loads of student stories, so real life student stories with different niche experiences as well. So we have a series on life as a Black student. We've recently launched a series on life as a neurodivergent students. So you can learn more about your experience through others' experiences. And again, that leaning on each other, looking after yourself. You've got this. You're not the only one experiencing it. So just reach out, make that connection, and it will be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Esther, if a student listening today feels overwhelmed, what's one thing that you'd like them to hear?
Yeah, well, just to echo what Neve was saying, again, it is important to know that you're not alone. It's so normal to feel this way. And I think it's also important to recognize that you're allowed to feel this way. And I'm sort of talking to myself here, someone who was a student just some months ago, and someone who's quite hard on myself in general. But you don't need to prove yourself to anyone and pretend like you have every single thing figured out if you don't. And again, most people don't. And some of the most comforting advice that I've heard is that this is the time to make mistakes. If you're a student, you're likely still very young. And even if you're an older student, the same still applies. But you should be trying new things and exploring your interests and experimenting. Try it all, because even if you make a mistake or things don't go to plan, it's very unlikely that the outcomes of your decisions right now will be final. If you invest your time learning a new skill and then you realize that a couple months down the line it's not for you, that's okay. You can try a new skill. Even if, say, you apply for a course and you realize you're passionate about something else after your first semester or even your first year, that's okay too. You don't have to stick with your initial decision. So mainly just knowing that it's normal to feel overwhelmed or lost. But again, circling back to our earlier discussion, just take each day as it comes and don't worry too much about having it all figured out, because most people don't.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you. And Sarah, what advice would you give if someone feels overwhelmed or lost?
I think I would say, there is always like a next step, even if you can't see the full way ahead. And things do get better, but often that's in small, steady ways rather than a sudden fix. But I think if you are feeling overwhelmed, it's about thinking about things will get better, and how do you move towards that. And I think the one thing I'd want students to hear is really that reaching out, whether that's to a friend or to your academic tutor or to like a wellbeing service, that's a really powerful act of self-care and of looking out for yourself. And I think if you can take that step, it might feel really hard, but it'll be something that is really rewarding. It's about taking that step, about looking after yourself. And one of the bits of advice I once got, and I always stick by as well, is that that thing that feels really hard to do, and that thing that you're putting off and you're thinking it's too much, if you can get yourself to do it, it probably is the thing that's going to make the most difference. And if you can just psych yourself up and have the courage to do it, whether that's telling somebody else that you're finding it hard or reaching out for some support, if you can get yourself to do it, that will be the thing that can be really, really beneficial. So just do reach out. It's the most powerful thing you can do, and there is help there, and there are people who really want to help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got one more question left in our pre-prepared questions that we'll go to in a minute, and then we will be moving into our live Q&A questions. We've had some come through already, but if you do have any questions for our panelists, now's the time to get them into the Q&A box. But before we move on to that, the final pre-prepared question, we begin with Maria. What does balance actually look like in student life, and how can it be redefined to feel achievable?
So balance might mean spending more time on assignments, and other days it might mean resting or spending time with friends, because the important thing is balance shifts with your needs. So in order to visualize it, think of like 4 plates spinning. You have studies, self-care, relationships, and responsibilities. So balance means adjusting your attention so none of them crashes. But if we're being very real, balance isn't a constant state, it's a cycle. So some weeks, will be heavy on work and others on life. But the key thing is to notice when you're slipping and gently recenter, but not blame yourself. And for this question, I do have a mental tactic. So it could be like, what is the one area I must maintain, even if everything else flexes? So that can be sleep, movement, connection, spirituality, and that becomes your non-negotiable anchor, and everything else is movable around it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And Neve, what does balance actually look like in student life?
I think similar to Maria's point there, is it kind of looks different for everyone. I know some people, and again, it's that sort of where do you get your energy from? Do you get your energy from being social and spending time with friends? Or do you get your energy from shutting down, putting on a face mask and watching nonsense TV? I think it does look different for everyone. And so it's how that becomes achievable is by knowing what works for you. So again, testing things out, protecting that time. Once you know what works for you, once you know what really helps kind of bring your energy levels back up. And as Mari says, well, it's I really like that idea of a cycle. It's not kind of one way or the other. It's gonna change. It's gonna be flexible. So I say really figure out what works for you and prioritize that. But it does look really different for everyone. It is doable. It feels unachievable at times, but again, there is natural lulls in kind of student life. So be smart with using those lulls and be smart with kind of using that time to re-energize. Don't be feeling guilty about not working over Christmas if you're giving yourself some break. It's really important that you do maintain those energy levels so that you can then continue to feel balanced when you are back at uni.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. So we'll move now into our live Q&A. Thank you to those that have gotten questions in already. There's still time to get your questions in if you have any for our panelists. So panelists, if there's a question that you'd like to answer, just pop your hand up and it will be fine. Oh, Esther, sorry, did you want to add on to the previous?
Yeah, sorry, I just really agreed with what Mario and Neve were saying, so I just wanted to sort of add to that. I feel like when we think about balance, it's likely that most of us sort of envision, like a weighing scale where we need an equal weighting on both sides. And, to expand this to the multiple aspects of life, let's say you have a goal to reach 100%, you might feel as though you need to invest 10% of your time somewhere. And if you do that, you have to invest 10% to another thing, so it's equal. So it was, for example, giving 10% to studying, then 10% to family, 10 to fitness, 10 to work, etc. But at times that could be achievable, but each season comes with different priorities whereby we may need to adjust our ratios. So at times we might have to invest 50% into something and then distribute the remaining 50% elsewhere, or even say 70% into studying, for example. So exam seasons, for instance, where that might take priority. And then we still have 30% to invest into other aspects of life, whereby everything still adds up to 100. So rather than thinking of a literal balance, we can redefine this to ensure that we don't feel guilty for adjusting and prioritizing our time and efforts according to the context, just like what Neve and Mario were saying earlier, really.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you. Perfect. So heading into our live Q&A. If students need to take a break for their well-being, is this supported and or doable? I assume that's in the university context. So if they want to take a break from their course for their well-being, is that supported and doable?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say yes, absolutely. And sometimes that is the right thing to do. Depending on how your well-being is and the impact it's having on your studies, it's not in your interest to try and stay on when actually you might need to take out a break to look after yourself and then come back and you want to get the most out of your degree. You're investing a lot of time and money in it. So I would say most universities have various options for taking a short break and catching up, or taking a longer and more extended break if you need to, which sometimes has different names at different universities. It might be suspension of studies, or it's quite an old-fashioned term which we use at Lancaster called intercalation. But you can apply for that on any grounds, but particularly well-being, if you feel you need to do that and take that time out. And normally how that works is it's effectively like hitting a pause button. and you can pause your studies exactly where you are, take the time out, take the time that you need, and then when you come back, you can restart them. And it'll be a pause on your fees and things like that as well. And with most universities, they would also, look at your accommodation contract as well, and that would be factored in too. So there's if you feel you need that, I would say, yeah, absolutely use it. Check what your university's kind of policies and procedures are, but normally they will have a team. Your academic department should be able to advise you on what's possible, and for different courses there might be different amounts of time that it's okay to take out depending on your level of study. It's sometimes a lot easier if you're a postgraduate research student than if you're an undergraduate with a lot of lab classes that might need to be caught up, for example. But if you talk to your department, they'll be able to advise you on that and what's possible and what your options are. So universities are used to dealing with this, and they do have policies in place. So I'd say, yeah, do speak to them. And don't worry about doing that. It's the sensible thing to do if you feel you need that break.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, what does meaningful support from lecturers or tutors look like in practice?
Could I answer this one first? Yep. So when I did my dissertation, you tend to have a more personal relationship because you work with one tutor. And for example, with me, I just used to book office hours. By the way, guys, really make use of office hours. That's the best time to get as much support as you want from them. Anywho, I used to go to her and just rant. I used to say to her that I can't do this, I can't do it anymore. And just in that time, just use it to talk about how you feel personally, and just talk to them like they're your friend. Honestly, if you just try to get past that wall, it really does help you. And then from there onwards, they can give you the right steps to first of all get out that mindset, and secondly, help you improve your work. So yeah, I think from me, use the office hours.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Perfect. So how do we move beyond thinking that we're trapped in the same place and not making improvements or strides forward? Esther?
I can take this one. So I'm going to give another sort of visual analogy in case you couldn't tell. I quite like those, but if you sort of picture life as like a long path, no matter where you are, you won't be able to see how far you've come unless you turn around and sort of look at the path that's behind you. Sort of similar to what Sarah was saying earlier, just sort of acknowledge the progress that you've made, and even if it is incremental, even if it's one step, that's still one step forward. It doesn't have to be a major leap, but it's important to sort of reflect and congratulate yourself for how far you've come. So make sure you do that and don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And Neve?
Yeah, I also want people to be aware that there are multiple paths. There's not just one route, there's not just one way. So when you feel feeling kind of stuck and well, I can't do that next step, maybe there's a side path, maybe there's a different way. And that goes the same for support. So if you feel like, oh well, I don't feel comfortable talking to people about how I'm dealing with things, again, there's blogs, there's podcasts, there's self-help books. Self-help books are a really great place as a first port of call. And you can get some, again, specifically to whatever it is that you're dealing with. So if you're finding kind of that you're dealing with perfectionism, there are self-help books about how to manage that and deal with that and take the pressure off yourself. And if you're struggling with that kind of feeling of overwhelm and anxious thoughts, there are specific books that can help you there. There's actually a really good series called the Overcoming series. And again, they have them on specific ones, including kind of how to deal with self-doubt. So if you're struggling with kind of low self-esteem, there's ones really there. So it's kind of, as I say, I want to kind of let people know there's a menu of options available. So if you're feeling stuck and you don't know where to go, have a look at what's available. It's not there's not just one answer, there's not just one path. There are lots of options available to help you get to that next place.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you both. So I'm an international student in psychology second year, and I feel like I have ADHD. Is there anywhere or anyone I can talk to confirm my assumption? Yeah, Neve?
There are specific charities, organisations that are a really good place to start with these. None specific ones to mind right now, but again, we've recently launched this on our student stories. So Life as a Neurodivergent Student. So we have podcasts on there from neurodivergent students themselves. So again, maybe listening to those thinking, okay, this sounds a little bit like what I'm dealing with, and kind of learning a bit more about what it is that you're experiencing. And then with a lot of these things, such as ADHD, with other neurodiversities, with anxiety, with other mental health conditions, it's really hard to get a diagnosis. It can often be quite difficult to get a diagnosis. So I'd kind of look into your options that are available. So it's often starting with those specific organisations, which I'll have a research and find out, see if we can pull up some that are specific for ADHD. They're always a really good start. Again, charity is a really good option. But being aware that you don't have to have a diagnosis to get support. So there is support available without having specific diagnosis, kind of knowing how those kind of tendencies affect you, and kind of putting things into place that are going to help you, or requesting support for things that are going to help you. You can do that. You can ask for support. You can ask for specific, for example, questions in advance of an interview. Those sorts of things you can ask for. There's nothing to stop you asking for. You don't need a diagnosis to ask for specific support. So it's okay to reach out for help. So yeah, in terms of the first step of getting a diagnosis, some really good support options for specific charity organisations will help guide you on how to do that, but being aware that you don't need a specific diagnosis to get that support.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So how can students handle loneliness or the feeling of not fitting in? Maria?
So loneliness, I think, happens to everyone at uni, and that's okay. But people need to remember that uni is just one part of your life. So try get out of that. So for example, reaching out to friends or family whenever you can. And if that's not an option, which is totally understandable, there are spaces on campus like societies and clubs where you can meet people who share your interests. And I know if you're introverted like me, it sounds scary, like you just don't want to do it. But honestly, once you take that first step, it can be so rewarding. And also volunteering or even working part-time jobs also helps increase your like daily human interaction. So if you're not sure where to start, you can check out some opportunities and advice even on our Prospects website as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So we are coming to the end of our live Q&A at the moment. If you do have any last minute questions, do feel free to get them in. But this webinar has been recorded today, so you will all receive the link on demand, and it will be found on the Prospects website afterwards, where you can share it with all of your friends and family and rewatch it time and time again for all of the amazing advice that has been present this afternoon. But heading now into our final live Q&A question. If I want to reach out for support, where is the best place to start?
I'm happy to jump in and get started here. As I say, there's a whole menu of options. So if you're wanting to get support, whether it's something you're not sure what the problem is, that's okay. So when we're talking about specific concerns that we're dealing with, there are specific organisations and areas that can be of help. But if you're not sure, if you're just not feeling yourself, those student support services are the first place to start. Use those that are kind of available at your university. You've also got your student unions, so kind of connecting with the staff there, the kind of sabbatical staff that are around you, kind of being aware of what's available on campus is really good, but also there's stuff not on campus. You can reach out for websites. Again, Anxiety UK, who I used to work with, they provide student memberships, so discount memberships for students, and they get support services available as part of that membership. And again, of course, as at Student Minds, have a look at our website, see what's available there, because it could just be that reading a bit more about what you're dealing with can help you find the right path to get you started. But just small steps. It can be overwhelming to get started, but just try and make that first reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. We have just had one final question come in. So how can students prepare for life transitions, like moving out, finishing uni, or starting work in a healthy way? Maria?
So for me personally, so context again, I graduated last year and I started my grad scheme 3 months after graduating. And for me, it was a scary time because if you're like me, I'm a massive overthinker. So the first thing I did was go to people that I know that have had a job for a long time, or just, I don't know, recently just started their new corporate job, and just talk to them about what's it like, what's the expectation, things like that. And even going on TikTok or like social media platforms and just see if people have given advice. That really helped. Or even professional organizations, maybe like Student Minds, things like that. Super helpful.
Amazing. And Neve?
Lovely, thanks Maria for the little shout out. Yeah, I think it's being aware as well that again, you're all in a very similar situation. You're not alone in what you're dealing with. So a lot of people around you will be feeling the same. So use that peer-to-peer support aspect, kind of reach out to each other, think about, talk about any applications or talk about being knocked back from applications, because we all experience it, we all have experienced it, and we all will continue to experience it. It's a part of life, these kind of difficult things that happen, especially in terms of when you're entering the working world. But even if, say, just as you're coming into university, that whole change of location, you might be in a completely different city. But as I say, there are lots of people around you that are experiencing the same thing. So maybe have a look to see what things are on campus around that peer-to-peer support. It happens naturally anyway, because you're in this situation together. But don't be afraid to open up a little bit more. Something that I've learned a lot from my time in mental health charity sector is that actually it's a really great way to kind of build bonds with each other. We connect by sharing our stories, sharing our fears, sharing our worries, and sharing advice with each other. And that's really important that we do as humans, as a way to connect. We are social creatures. So it's really important that you do connect with those around you, even if it, especially, when you're first starting out, it feels awkward, it feels horrible, especially if you're introverted. Even if you're not, I'd consider myself more extroverted, but it's still making that step to connect to others does feel difficult, but you're all feeling the same way. So it's okay. Do try and be a little bit brave. As I say, we're not saying that it's an easy process. We're not kind of trying to sideswipe that at all. It's difficult. It can be difficult. It can be challenging, but it's important that you do it, because it'll be so much more beneficial in the long run for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you so much to all of the panelists today for your advice. As I say, you will be receiving this webinar on demand as a link in the next week or so you can rewatch it. I'll share it with your friends. As you leave the webinar today, a survey will pop up. It'll take a couple of minutes to fill in, and we'd really appreciate your feedback. Once again, for more career advice, articles, videos, and podcast episodes, you can head to prospects.ac.uk, where you can register for free. We hope that you found this useful. Thank you so much for coming, and have a great rest of your day.